Unsyndicated presents Off the Air with Sean Baligian.
Believe it, we're not that far away. It's crazy. It kind of crept up. No, forget kind of. It really crept up. And I can't take credit for this. But before I introduce our guest tonight, I had longtime pal and listener Joe over in Windsor said, okay, drafts aren't as fun when the Lions are picking this late. Right. I think there's some validity to that as we introduce my pal, Scott Bischoff, kindly joining us. Scott is everywhere. Okay. I'll tell you everywhere he's at in just a second. We're glad that he's with us right now. But how are you, pal?
I'm doing well. How are you? Thank you for having me on. This will be fun.
Oh, are you kidding me? This is absolutely fantastic. And Scott, this is the time of year where we're seeing the mock drafts come out ad nauseum, okay? And I was just looking at one, and I'm going to use it just for reference. I'm sure you saw it. PFF had their mock draft that came out earlier today. I think I saw it this morning. Whatever, they all run together, and they have count them, 6 quarterbacks going in the top 15, which would be an all-time high. And listen, it's something you and I have talked about for years, and people would argue with us. And I don't think there's an argument anymore. That premium on quarterback, every year, seemingly, somebody takes a quarterback that maybe you didn't see going, or somebody moves up to take a quarterback that maybe you didn't see going.
Yeah. It's as simple as looking at the Houston Texans right now and seeing the reward of, hitting on a quarterback in round 1 and what that can do, how that opens up a window. Doesn't mean the Texans are going to win Super Bowls or any of that stuff with what they've got going on, but it sure does allow you to do some exciting things. And as long as they play, you got to hit on them, right? So that's the thing. Like, Houston did a good job of hitting on CJ Stroud. I don't think anybody really saw any of that coming, but it's just an example of what happens when you do hit on quarterback, and the reason why you should be swinging to hit on quarterback, because when you do hit on a quarterback, it's gold, and it is literally, it's the ticket to competing both in real football, but also off the field in free agency and through trades, what they just did with Diggs, that kind of stuff. So this is going to be interesting, because in this class, you've got some young ones. Caleb Williams, Drake May, JJ McCarthy are young players. Jaden Daniels is ripe. He's an overaged player. So is Penix, and so is Bo Nix. So how much loss in value is there with a player who might be 24 at the time of the draft, as opposed to a player who might be 21, so to speak? Players playing for a long time, but we're going to see what teams like Denver do. I'm assuming PFF had Denver taking a quarterback. We'll see what Minnesota does. I don't think they did what they did to acquire pick 23 a few weeks ago without the trade up in mind. We're still trying to figure out who is pick 2 at this point, and I think that's why we don't know anything yet. But what does Vegas do? What does Denver do if they're shut out of the trade up scenario? I've heard some interesting stuff about Denver feeling like they're almost forced to do this, and a willingness to possibly give up on Patrick Surtain to make that move up. So like Surtain, Cortland Sutton kind of stuff. Obviously a team, say New England in that regard would covet a trade like that. Whether Denver does something like that, I don't know. But I think when Sean Payton talks about them absolutely being in the market to come up, it's that kind of stuff he's talking about. So, I don't know that I don't think there'll be 6 that go in round 1, but it wouldn't stun me. And it wouldn't stun me if our Lions are in a situation at 29 to be a team that somebody comes up into late round 1 for a quarterback for, possibly.
I will tell you what PFF had to say in case you missed it, and for the benefit of our guest, once again, Scott Bischoff kindly joining us. But I have to also introduce my pal, of course, with the Mitch Album Show and Sports Rap on 760 WJR. Please welcome my pal Blake with his brand new router. I'm so proud of him. He got a brand new router. My little boy has grown up. How are you, buddy?
I've been going through it the last 24 hours, man. Just no internet, and then dealing with that, and then drive home. 94s down to 1 lane. It was a whole bunch of fun. Really enjoyed it.
Hey, Blake, just for your benefit, I'm going to blow through this. According to PFF, this was the mock draft that I was looking at. I was going to kind of use this for the basis of our conversation today. They said Caleb Williams, Chicago Bears, write this one in Sharpie. Scott, I think that goes along with what you were saying the last time you joined us. They have Drake May at number 2. They said it seems to be a toss-up between May and Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels at number 3, Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 4, J.J. McCarthy at number 5, going to the Minnesota Vikings. Neighbors going to number 6 to the Giants. Joe Alt, number 7 to Tennessee. Dallas Turner from, of course, Alabama, going to the Falcons at 8. Bears going wide receiver, of course, going with Rome from the Huskies. Brock Bowers going number 10 to the Jets. Fuaga going to the Chargers at 11. How about this? Bo Nix going to the Broncos at number 12. 13 for what it is worth as I try to scroll down. Of course, the computer decided that it just wanted to freeze, but there you go. We got through 13, and then we'll move on from there. But yeah, Scott, again, I mean, I'm not shocked that you're seeing the quarterbacks go. I mean, we've seen it time and time and time again in these drafts, but I think it also opens itself up to that scenario which you just spoke of. There are going to be teams that are going to go, oh no, now we have to move into the first round for this, that, and the other thing, and that might just play into Brad Holmes' hands.
It would be great. We have seen him hit on picks, in the middle of the draft. They have a large window. I want to say it's 91 picks between their pick at 73. I think it's 73 and then 164. I would make a very educated guess thinking that Brad Holmes is going to do something to fill in that 91 pick window with a few picks, one or two, whatever it is, just because that's kind of where he's finding a lot of success in, say, rounds 3 and 4. So, does that mean they're moving off of 29 and going way back? I don't think so, but I could see him. I could see the Lions being involved in, a few trades, on not necessarily on draft night, but on day 2, just to jockey here and there. Just depends on what they do at 29, but yeah. If you look at looking at his first draft, it's amazing what his first draft looks like. It really is. I mean, like, they missed on, at this point, I think you would call Onwuzurike a miss, but there's some injury stuff there, and you knew about it going in. There's a risk there. And then,
sure.
And then it's Jamar Jefferson in round 7.
Yeah.
Everybody else is kind of they're a part of it, right? And the more picks you give a guy like that, the better. Just let him go to work. It's good. It's good stuff. He's done a great job. I mean, what do you guys think? Like, what do you think their needs are at this? What do you think their position they're going to address in round 1 is? I don't think anybody has any idea.
No idea. I think he's shown that. I think it is an exercise in futility. I mean, these people that have convinced themselves that they're grabbing a cornerback, I think you haven't learned from sitting at the table with Brad Holmes. I mean, honestly, sure, we could grab a cornerback. I mean, there are a ton of different needs. Okay, I mean, there's no doubt about that, and we all know what they are at this point in time. But anybody that says they know what Brad Holmes is going to do is speaking out of their behind, quite frankly, Blake.
Yeah.
No, and I mean, I was thinking about it from like an edge perspective. Like, if you're like telling me I need to draft a guy and he needs to be ready to play, like I'd much rather draft an edge guy than a corner, because those guys just seem like they're more quick to adjust to the NFL game. But who knows what's going to be there edge wise also at pick 29. So
yeah, and it's not the best class of edge players. It has some depth, and you'll be able to find players a little bit later. But at 29, I think there's a big circle on a player like Darius Robinson from Missouri, and people want to compare him to Cam Jordan, and I get it, but to me, I watch him, and I don't think he's remotely athletic enough to survive as an edge player in the NFL. And if that's the case, he's redundant with Josh Pascal. And are you really going to do that at pick 29? And I don't know. So outside of that, Jared Verse from Florida State is a fantastic prospect. He will not be there at 29 unless there's a random bong video that's coming. And
we can get one of those going.
We've never seen that before.
Listen, go ahead and make it. Let's put it out.
AI can do crazy things nowadays.
It's terrible. He's a really good prospect. He's just not going to be available. But outside of Laitu Latu potentially falling, he had a neck fusion surgery a couple years ago, had to medically retire, and came back, got cleared, and played. He's a really good player. He's a high level. He's high level with his hands and his movement ability. He would be a player if he's on the board at 29. And I can already see it. If he's on the board at 29, I can see the video coming out in the future of the Lions calling that pick in and Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell losing their shit because they got him at 20. I can see it. Like he's that guy, at that point. But the corner class is deeper. At 29, though, it almost feels similar. You're almost reaching on a player. I don't know that Kool-Aid McKinstry really fits them perfectly. I'd want him to play a little more physical. There are moments watching him where he allows a defender to cross his face when he's trying to press them. And that is almost like a total, you can't do that. So I want him to be more physical when he's not at times. So I don't know how much of a fit he is at 29, but I think there are players in round 2 that make some sense. Both of the corners from Florida State, Jerry Jones and Renardo Green, make sense. And player I like a lot from Missouri is not the one everybody wants to talk about, Ennis Rakestraw, but it's the other one on the other side. Chris Abrams-Drain is super, super sticky in coverage and physical and all that stuff, good ball skills. So in round 2, a player like that would be a pretty dynamic option. And then it allows you to do whatever you want in round 1. Clearly, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I wanted to say we got a lot of people in chat. And of course, if you have a question or comment or you'd like to get some analysis on a guy, that's why we have Scott here. By the way, Elizabeth said, proud is an understatement. Isn't that the truth? We're all so proud of our young Blake. We really are. We're so proud of our young Blake. Nick May said, are the Bears and Vikings compete for the NFC North title right away with Caleb and JJ? I've said this to you for years, Scott, and I'm not going to change my opinion. I am Bill Parcells. You get a mixed bag with rookies, especially rookie quarterbacks. You cannot expect a rookie quarterback to come in and have you legitimately compete for a division title. Is it possible? Of course it is. Okay. I mean, anything's possible, but there's just too much going on. I'll get your thoughts on that, but you know me. I've said that forever and a day, especially when we were doing the fantasy stuff. I don't trust rookies until they earn your trust. I don't trust them at all, and especially a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Caleb Williams is going to go to Chicago. He's going to play right away, day one. He is. Sam Darnold is in Minnesota right now. It wouldn't stun me if Minnesota did make that trade up if Darnold started, say, the first 6, 8, whatever, half a season, maybe less, whatever. And then McCarthy kind of steps in from that point going forward. But clearly, there's going to be struggles. There's going to be difficult times with both of those quarterbacks and both of those teams. We shouldn't forget about the Packers, though. Jordan Love looked really good last year. It didn't surprise me a bit, right? So
terrified me.
Yeah. So, and I think they kind of figured some stuff out, and they're so young with their weapons in the passing game. I could see them being a scary team right away.
Weren't all their receivers and backs were all like first and second year players?
Yeah.
Basically, all of their weapons were. So they're only going to get better.
Yeah.
They're younger than the Lions, too. That's one thing. I know people don't want to hear that, but Scott, to emphasize your point, they're younger than the Lions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they had Dontavian Wicks. They had Christian Watson, young player. I'm blanking on the wide receiver from Michigan. I should know this. It's terrible. He was awesome last year.
Mm-hmm.
That's a loaded offense with a good quarterback who played at a pretty high level the back half of the season. So yeah, I mean, the NFC North has the potential to turn into a pretty stacked division, not necessarily in 2024, but going forward. This is kind of why the Lions window is now, and it's going to be open for a little while, but their window is right now. I don't necessarily think you're going to have to deal with Chicago or Minnesota this year. So it's just fending off Green Bay. I mean, it's an interesting thought, and yeah, those guys are going to be good players. And I like McCarthy as much as, anybody else does. I think he'd be a really nice fit there. I don't know if he's going to get past New England. New England's got some West Coast ties with what they have going on there on offense, and he's a perfect fit for that kind of stuff. They may like him to enough that they're, let's say it's Jaden Daniels or May that goes at 2. It could be McCarthy at 3, and Minnesota has no opportunity to get to him. So, in that scenario, I think Minnesota would be on Drake May, which, this is going to be on a future episode of Bad Takes Exposed. But I would be totally fine with Minnesota taking Drake May. I don't totally get his game, and I think there's a lot of flaws in his game that stand out when you watch him, repeatedly throw the ball. The mechanics are weird. It's real clunky feet, all that kind of stuff. So I'm probably getting a little sidetracked there, but
and the other thing with Minnesota too, and I don't know if you guys agree or disagree with this, but I think O'Connell's a really good coach.
Clearly,
I do. I think he does a really good job, and like what he does with offenses and how he schemes stuff open. I think he's a really good coach, and a rookie QB is going to go in and learn a lot from him, no matter who it is.
For sure.
Packers aren't going anywhere. Romeo, Jaden Reed.
Jaden Reed, that was the guy.
They've got weapons, guys. I mean, that's just and Blake.
Two really good tight ends, like really good tight ends.
I remember talking to you about it, around Thanksgiving time, even before Thanksgiving. That game is okay. This kid's starting to figure it out. And of course there are still some ups and downs, and he had some ups and downs even going into the playoff, but that was the case. Doug said, speaking of Bowers, any thoughts on the Lions moving up to grab him? I know that was a question in particular before they matched the offer to San Francisco, but Scott, your thoughts in particular on Bowers?
Man, Bowers is Holmes said this last year. He's a positionless player. He is not a tight end. He is more, I would say he is a jumbo slot receiver more than he is as a tight end. He's fine as a blocker. He's fine, all that stuff. But that's not why you're drafting him. he's dynamic with the ball in his hands. Georgia did a lot of easy stuff for him, which is cool. That's great. The Lions can do the same kind of thing. So, there's no, like, looking at the Lions roster, they have a need. They need a pass catcher. They really do.
They really
Right?
do.
They really do. It's just, is it a traditional way to go about things? I think the answer is no there, but who cares? It just, what do you do? How does a defense respond if you're getting the ball to that guy? And, same thing with Amon-Ra, and obviously defenses struggle to limit Laporta. And then there's Jameson Williams, and then you got the running back. I mean, if you're telling me the Lions rolled out of the first round with Bowers in this draft, I know that the majority of the fan base is just going to freak because he's listed as a tight end. But, you would take an offense. This is going to sound kind of silly, but you'd be taking a really potent, damn good offense and injecting it with some steroids and, putting some blow up their nose, kind of, so to speak. Like, they would take, I mean, it'd be crazy. How do you defend? How would you defend that? Like, I mean, he is one of, when you look at I know. I'm falling into the trap thinking about it. There's 3 elite receivers. There are 4 elite pass catchers in this draft, and he's one of them. And, the Lions are going to walk out of the draft with one of the, okay, cool. I don't think that's even remotely realistic, but, if he falls to the 15-16 range, and there's a team like Seattle that doesn't have a second round pick and probably would want a second round pick in this particular draft, and you have a couple there, and maybe you have to give up something in the future, and if they covet Bowers like that, yeah, I'd be all for it. It's just, it's really the first time I've kind of thought about. It's a good question, by the way, or a good point. It's the first time I'd ever considered Bowers in the Lions offense. It'd be fascinating.
All I keep thinking about is that New England offense when they had Gronk and Hernandez. And then also now I'm wondering if they drafted them, which one of the two would be the murderer.
Oh, boy.
Wow. Go. Okay.
Sorry. I got dark there quick.
Today, but that got dark in a hurry.
A couple more questions from the chat, and of course, if you have any questions or comments, that's why Scott in particular is here, and we thank him for it. David, who is definitely college football elite, I think for sure the Lions make some trades. Boy, it sure looks that way. Here it comes, Scott. If I had a dime the amount of times I said this, the amount of times we talk about a potential move down and the amount of times it happens are two different things. But Brad Holmes has shown that he's a guy that is willing to do that.
He might even come up.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris said, fellas, here for an education by Scott. I believe in sophomore slumps for most. No one had film on Love. Teams have had an off season to dissect him. And then he asked, does Marvin Harrison go 6, 7, or possibly 8?
Okay, Marvin Harrison probably goes 4 unless there's a trade, unless there's a reason for Arizona to move out. But they have so much capital already that I could see them just like, listen, we're rebuffing all these trade offers. I know you guys want to give us all this stuff, but we love Marvin Harrison. I think that I kind of think he's off the board before 6, 7, or 8, but. In a scenario where, let's say the Cardinals have traded out for something and the Chargers have traded out for something, and for some silly reason, Harrison's still available. Like, let's say Neighbors goes to whoever coming up from somewhere to pick 5, then Harrison would go at 6 for sure. The Giants are not going to take. I don't think the Giants would want Neighbors just because of the size stuff, but they definitely would be into Harrison and O'Dunes just because of the bigger body, the finish, all that stuff, the way they separate all those things. They have a lot of diminutive players already. They're Wan'Dale Robinson is small. Darius Slayton is small. They need a bigger bodied receiver to help that offense. I don't think that Harrison's there at 6, 7, or 8. Certainly not at 7 or 8.
Blake is incapable of looking at him objectively. We've discussed this before, right, Blake? Scott,
He's really good.
Okay, I'm glad to hear you say that. He's
very
really
good.
Scott, I absolutely love the guy, and especially when you think of what he had to work with last year, and to still do what he did. I think he showed everybody what type of impact he might make in the National Football League.
Yeah, he's a. I don't think anybody loves the process that he took as far as getting to the draft, not working out, none of that stuff. But I think if we all just put ourselves in his shoes, why would you anyway?
100%.
It's all on the film. Like, you know what I mean? Like people are now wanting to talk about him being slow and maybe that's why he didn't run. And it's like, well, but find plays in games where he looks slow. He's not slow. Is he 4.3s? No, he's a bigger receiver, right? So, yeah, I mean, he's a super polished, high level football player who's going to separate for you early, intermediate, and deep. He's got great hands. He's got great feet, all that stuff. He catches the ball really well. It's just, do you want the super explosive player and Neighbors over the security that he's going to give you? I know which way I would go there, but I can see some teams, a few teams having Neighbors maybe graded a touch higher, but Harrison's been spectacular for 2 years. And yeah, you're right. Last year wasn't a great scenario for him, but he still performed. A very, very good football player. Maybe the best receiver to come out easily since Jamar Chase, and maybe even surpassing Chase a little bit, just because of his ability to run routes and some of the stuff he offers. Yeah.
Blake just threw up in his mouth. If you couldn't tell, not only were you talking so highly of him, but you said the J word, and that's one of Blake's true loves, isn't it, Blake?
I do love me some Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase.
Who doesn't?
Love those boys.
Yeah. Everybody.
My Instagram feed is just a bunch of you know how there's Instagram accounts that make thirst traps of athletes. Mine's a bunch of Joe Burrow videos. I get them. I just see them all the time. Okay, and I like all of them. I love them. They're great.
That's one way to go about,
I will fully admit I have a huge man crush on Joe Burrow.
There's a Ronnie Brown joke somewhere in there.
Oh, yeah. And not just Ronnie Brown. There are more.
There's a
but Scott didn't even say the guy that I like the most, which is, well, he did, but not. So for you, it's Harrison, then Neighbors, and then Odunze?
No, I think I would probably go Harrison, Oduns, and then Neighbors.
Okay.
But I would understand totally if somebody had it a completely different way of those three for whatever reasons that there are. I would get it.
Is there? Yeah. I guess that was going to be my follow-up. So you're kind of looking at them as, all right, well, what type of guy are you looking for as opposed to, no, this guy's much better or that guy's much better? I mean, they're all, you'd put them in that same kind of category, Scott, where you could, again, understand why this team took that guy as opposed to taking that guy? There isn't separation between the three?
There is, but it's so small, and it's a matter of taste. That's all it is. I think there's some off the field with Neighbors where that could maybe push him just a touch down. I don't think it's bad, super negative stuff. I just think that it was described as him feeling like he's already earned the right to be talking about wherever he gets drafted, having input as to who the quarterback should be, kind of stuff. Making sure he's getting his, right? Dude. So, and it's like, well, so then you look at Marvin Harrison, and I don't know that I've ever heard him speak about, really much of anything. And then Romo Dunes is this high character kid who goes to the combine and wants to set a personal best in the 3-cone drill. So he runs it, a dozen times because he's uber competitive. those guys, O'Dunes and Harrison, are bigger. They're really efficient, polished route runners. Great with the ball in the air. That's not Neighbors' game. Neighbors' game is everything that he does after the catch, and with speed and explosiveness. So it just depends on, what you're looking for in a receiver. I think there's safety in a player like Harrison or O'Dunes because they can win in a variety of ways. But I think that, watching LSU's offense and seeing how much Neighbors is deployed out of the slot, it's not all the time. He plays out wide too. And he is very fast. He's explosive. He's a good route runner. It's a funky offense. There's a lot of open space for them in that offense. But once he gets the ball in his hands, he's a menace, where those other two guys are not necessarily running away from everybody the way Neighbors can. So, if that's what you're looking for, a yak monster kind of player, an explosive player who can take the distance, any opportunity he touches the ball, I would say that Neighbors might intrigue you more than the other two. But if you're a traditional offense where you want a player who's very reliable, is going to run good routes, catch everything thrown to you, win with the ball in the air, move the chains, do a bunch of other high-end stuff, that's the other two. So, yeah, I mean, they're both, all three of them are great prospects. They really are.
Do you think the Bills have to go receiver in round 1 after the Diggs trade?
I don't think they have to. I think this draft is loaded at receiver.
Yeah.
There are players. It just depends on the type they want. But they could go wide receiver in round 1, but they could also wait and take one in round 2 or round there. This is a really good class of receivers.
By the way, my buddy Kirk Hunter asked, when is draft day? It's only 17 days away. And if you're looking for a place to hang out, I got a perfect spot for you. Why don't you come to the place where we hung out on opening day, Batch Brewing? We're going to be out there, draft night. We're still trying to figure out what's going on. I gave the invite to Scott. We might be on for an hour and a half. We might be on for 3.5 hours. We might be on for 4 hours. Whatever the case may be, if you're looking for a great place in historic Corktown, look no further than Batch Brewing Company. They got the drinks. They've got a fantastic menu as well. Lots of barbecue items on there. I'm always going to give a thumbs up. Official craft beer sponsor of Off the Air. I can't thank them enough for the great time that we had on opening day. Trust me, you'll love this spot. Make sure you check out their website. A great menu, scratch kitchen, and we'll be hanging out there on draft night. Scott, I know you're a busy man, but I did extend the invite to you. Hopefully you can join us out there. I know Blake will be coming later on. Todd and I will be hanging out there. We'll still try to figure it out. Do you want to go 2 hours? Do you want to go 3 hours? Do you want to go the whole damn first round? I'm going to be watching it anyway, so if we can...
Yeah, we can talk about it.
Just do it.
I think with it being in the city, there's a desire from the family wanting to get down there. So that's it. Right.
Understand.
So if that falls through, which I think it's because it's gonna be so hard to get, like, how we're not going to get into the theater where you're going to see players shaking hands with Roger Goodell. That's not happening. But we're still working out stuff on this end too. So we'll see.
No, and you know what? To that point, you got to go to visit Detroit. Make sure you get the NFL One Pass as well. Our friends from Visit Detroit and the Detroit Sports Commission, we've been doing a lot of stuff with them. Make sure you're prepared because, Scott, to your point, there are so many different intricacies that you can, find out. All you have to do is know before you go, and they're giving you the opportunity to do that. We can't thank our friends enough with Visit Detroit and certainly the Detroit Sports Commission. Doug asked an interesting question. He said, here's a scenario. Could the Lions trade Hendon Hooker to a needy team? First, how about this, Scott? What do you think of Hendon Hooker? I don't think I ever asked you about Hendon Hooker. And full disclosure, before he blew his knee out, in my mind, he was the runaway for the Heisman that year. That's who I was planning to vote for. No doubt about it. All things considered, And again, I'm not saying that translates to a guy being a great NFL player. See Tebow Tim, but what are your thoughts on Hendon Hooker? Let's start there.
So older player, really at this point, it's been almost a year and a half or so. It'll be around 2 years range, just under 2 years when they get to camp before anybody's really seen him throw a ball, right? So you just haven't seen it for a while. I know the Lions did at practice at the end of the season last year, but nobody else in the NFL has. So you're asking some team to look at his evaluation from 2 years ago in this kind of gimmicky sort of option down the field offense where all the receivers had option routes, even vertical routes were option routes. And what that means is that there wasn't necessarily a lot of progressions and structure for the quarterback to have to stay in, that they just kind of, I don't want to say ad-libbed, but there is an element of it where, okay, this receiver has his defender beat to the outside, and that's the choice he's made. All these choice routes and that kind of stuff. So now it's fitting the ball into those windows. And I think that's where he really shines, is the ability to put the ball down the field accurately. The question is, how does he function inside the structure of an offense? What kind of an offense would you run for him at the NFL level? Because the choice sort of option routes down the field is not necessarily a thing in the NFL. So gimmicky offense in college, older player, torn ACL, hasn't really taken snaps that anybody has seen for now a year and a half. We'll see some in this preseason, but expecting somebody to trade something for that guy is like, what do you expect? What are you going to get? You're going to get a 5th round pick? You just used the 3rd round pick last draft to draft him. So it's that one was a confusing one. Like, what do they think from him? What do they expect him to be? I think he will be either 29 or 30 years old at the end of his first contract. And in a perfect scenario, he's never taken a snap for you. He's moving on, right? Like, he's going to want to play somewhere. So it's a strange situation. I don't know what you would get for him. I think that you could probably flip, just as a, to put something out there. You could flip Hendon Hooker and say a 4th round pick for maybe a 3rd round pick kind of thing. But you're certainly not going to get a bunch of value for Hendon Hooker at this point. He just hasn't shown enough in the last year and a half to warrant that kind of a move.
Just to get like nerdy with that, like the Art Briles like system where they run like those wide receivers way out wide. Like, we've never seen a quarterback come out of that system and be successful in the NFL. There's not one name.
Yeah, and
that's why I never understood that pick, because it's hard to
confusing.
Translate that to the NFL game.
Yeah, and so I think the thing that did translate is the athletic stuff and the running stuff, where he was so explosive doing that, and then throwing the ball while running. He's really good at that. He's got a huge arm. So I get it. And yeah, you're right. That offense doesn't necessarily lead to NFL success, even from a receiver standpoint. Where they'll have like half field options. So 2 guys on this side of the field are going to run their routes, and these 2 guys are just going to hang out and just kind of walk 3 or 4 steps at the line of scrimmage. It's weird. It's a strange thing. And it made it, I think, a very tough evaluation to try to figure out what it is that he could do well. And to me, it's throwing the ball down the field and then taking off when pressure came and being super electric with the ball in his hands.
But then he tore his ACL.
Yeah, exactly. But I just can't see a team really thinking in a rational sense saying that's the guy we want to go get, and we're gonna give up a bunch to go get him. That doesn't make, to me, that doesn't seem like a plausible thing.
Blake, Scott, Sean here. I want to tell you about our friends from the Wealth Advantage Group for a moment. If you have any questions or comments, jump in. Scott, while I'm telling you about our friends at the Wealth Advantage Group, the Handsome Brothers, take a look at some of the comments in the chat. And if you're ready to take charge of your financial future, you need to look no further than the Wealth Advantage Group, located in historic downtown Northville and owned by those two guys, Mike Cusack, Jeff Cusack. They have over 20 years of industry experience. They understand that your financial goals are as unique as you are. That's why they offer personalized expert guidance to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning. Now, whether you're saving for retirement, getting ready to sell your company, already in retirement, doesn't matter. These guys can help you as they've helped me, and they can help you through every step of your financial journey. They work with clients throughout all stages of life and have clients in over 20 states. I think everybody knows the investment world is a complex one. But if you're ready to start taking your finances more seriously, it's time to work with a couple of experts. Reach out to the Wealth Advantage Group at 248-773-8574 or view their website at www.thewealthadv.com. Lots of questions about some of the Michigan players out there. I mean, Mikey's a perfect example. I'm going to get your thoughts on this for a second. I saw some people talking about him in the 4th and 5th round not that long ago, and I just shook my head. This is a day 2 guy all the way, right, Scott?
100%, yes. And in a scenario, potentially sneaking into the back end of round 1 kind of guy.
Ooh.
I mean, he was his path to this point has been unique. He was a receiver.
Ball hawk. I love ball hawks.
Yeah. He was a receiver. He's now a kind of Swiss Army knife. Very physical player. I think this is a player who understood a lot of what the offense was trying to do. And because he's smart and understands offense, really gets defense. And you could hear like some of the Washington players talking about how pissed they were early in that matchup when he's calling out exactly what they're doing, right? So that kind of stuff, it matters. Yes, he's undersized. We know he's undersized, but he is, just simply put, one of the best football players in the entire class. So when you get to a point where you're at, say, pick 29, and you have a player like Brian Branch, who is a safety and a nickel corner kind of blend, and you could bring in a player like Sane Ristil and allow them the flexibility and the redundancy of these are the things these guys do really well. And oh, by the way, it really limits what offenses can do. And yes, he's undersized, but he's a dog. He plays very physical. I don't think you'd have any issues with him running with tight ends, running with running backs. He doesn't play small. He screams Lions football player. The work, the intelligence, all of it. He's one of the players who I know I'm talking him up at this point, but he's a fantastic football player who deserves what's coming, and probably will be one of the first, I'd say, 10 picks in round 2, if not before that. And I know Lions fans would be kind of upset if he was the pick at 29 because he's small, but he is a fantastic football player, an electric prospect who could do a lot of things and would really open up some things on your defense and make things really interesting for the other players that are already on board. I would love that pick. I know it's a little off the wall, but I think he's a phenomenal prospect. I would say, he's, for most people, he's a top 35-ish player, in the top 40 player in this class. And you can make an argument for the intangibles that he should be higher. So, yeah. I mean, he's a great player. He's a great player.
Blake, if I may, just example 7,222. I've actually kept track of what Scott and I have talked about for probably a decade. Don't pay any attention to those mock drafts that come out in January or February, only to, mock them later because they're so off. I saw his name, this might be a sneaky pick in the 4th round. And I'm going, good Lord in heaven, knock it off. There's no way he's getting out of day 2. So here we go. Sorry, Blake.
No, you're good. I'm all for loving on Michigan players. You're good in my book.
Moving on.
But real quick, because someone said in the chat, who is the best prospect from Michigan besides JJ? And obviously, I think Mikey would be on that list. But also, I think Roman Wilson could be like a sneaky, really good pick for a team. Yeah. Like even like a Buffalo or like someone that needs a receiver, like
Carolina.
I think he's going to be a good pro. He's got great hands. Everything.
He does. He's a really good route runner. He's plenty athletic. He's physical, all that stuff. He's just short. But when you look at his path to the NFL, I mean, this dude was taking flights in high school to stay in high school and go play football in Hawaii. I mean, he's been operating on a pro level for quite a while, right? I mean, he's, and then when you look at like the high leverage stuff from last year, he had like 50 catches and a dozen touchdowns. It's like, okay, cool. Electric player, explosive, great route runner, very tough, very physical, everything that you would want. And he's already shown you that he's willing to put in work to play this game. And that matters. I mean, it just matters. So if he ends up in a place like Carolina with the 33rd pick, Carolina went from having essentially nothing last year to, for Bryce Young to now you have Deontay Johnson, you'd have Roman Wilson. Thielen is still there. Mingo they took last year in, say, round 3 to be a vertical guy. But you definitely have the makings of something that could work and make your quarterback work. Roman Wilson's a very good player.
All right. A couple of people have asked, and I'm going to say this so they can all get mad at me and say, take off your Sparty hat. But a couple of people have asked about Blake Corum. Scott, how can you not like Blake Corum? Like, I'm not being PC, okay? And yes, look at my hat. How can you not like Blake Corum? The kid's a warrior. He's battled back. He does so many good things for the community. This is a young man that gets it. With that being said, you knew there was a with that being said. I just don't think that his skill set, especially with the injury, the speed, et cetera, I don't think it translates at the NFL level, but I'm going to throw that at you, Scott.
It would translate to a very select few teams. Teams that run lots of outside zone, I don't think is necessarily his skill set. He is a power gap runner where it's timing, tempo, patience, and then being athletic enough to hit the hole as it opens and use leverage against defenders to run away from them. He's great at that kind of stuff. The one thing I will tell you, just because Michigan did not use him in the passing game does not mean he can't do it. In fact, he can. And I think there's some added value to what he can do as a player, catching the ball out of the backfield. Michigan didn't ask him to do that kind of stuff because the workload was so heavy running between the tackles, right? So, I think there's some places where he's just not going to fit, period, to your point. I think he probably, I would have him, and I would imagine I might get in trouble here. I have other running backs who I would think I would want ahead of him. Jonathan Brooks from Texas is really good coming off an ACL. Really good running back. Marshawn Lloyd from USC is super dynamic player. Trey Benson from Florida State, pretty upright runner. Reminds me a little bit of DeMarco Murray, where he's so tall the way he runs. He's going to take some abuse, right? Like he's going to get beat up. And
Yeah.
then Jalen Wright from Tennessee is a bit of a bigger version of Gibbs athletically. Not as he doesn't have vision like Gibbs had, and Tennessee did not use him as a pass catcher the way Alabama used Gibbs. So we gotta kind of push off on that just a touch. But just from an athletic standpoint, he ran 4.38 at 210 pounds. He's flying. Gibbs ran 4.36 at 199. Gibbs' vertical was like 33 and a half. I want to say Wright's vertical was in the 38s, and he broad jumped 11 feet. He's so athletic
That's nasty.
for a 210-pound dude, right? So, but I would have Corum in the mix with those guys, and it would just depend on the destination of where they go. Corum in the Lions running scheme would be super, super efficient and a smart play.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? But
yeah,
if you're putting Corum in the Miami running game, not going to work.
No,
just not going to work. So there's going to be a fit for him somewhere. And it's a little bit like Damian Pierce last year at Houston. 2 years ago, they ran like a heavy power scheme, and Bobby Slowick comes to town, brings the outside zone stuff, and Damian Pierce is not a fit anymore at all, like to the point where he's almost unplayable. So Corum's going to have to go to the right place for sure. The other guys I think can play in any system and be just fine. Bigger, like Marshawn Lloyd is 220 pounds, ran 4.46. Very dynamic player. Probably I would consider him and Brooks to be like running back 1A and 1B kind of thing. And it's a better running back class than people have given it credit for. And it is. There's some good running backs in this class. But Corum's in the mix. It's just he needs to find the perfect place where they run the ball a certain way for him.
Also, I agree with you 100%. Like, he was not as explosive this past year as he was like his junior year. But then, like, honestly, in the Rose Bowl, it was like old school Blake Corum. It was like he had gotten healthier and he got it back.
He's a warrior.
So that, like, obviously gives me hope that he was just getting healthier and getting right.
Yeah.
So, and to your thing with the pass catching, like when you have a guy like Donovan Edwards that is basically like a slot receiver on your offense, that helps a little bit too. You can use him in the receiving game. So
yeah, and their emphasis was run heavy, and they just wanted to run you over. And why change it if you're running for 5 yards a pop, there's no reason to throw.
Don't fix something that's not broken.
Yeah. So I get it, but I think he does have an expanded skill set that he was not allowed. I shouldn't say not allowed to show. He just didn't need to show in that offense.
We have about 10 minutes left. If you have any thoughts, any questions, you better fire them in there. Can't thank Scott enough for joining us. Again, we're going to do a draft show the night of the first round. So, Scott, hopefully you can join us in one way, shape, or form, but I know Blake will be there. We'll have some special guests. Let me talk to you about our friends at Legacy. Can't thank these guys enough. And if you haven't made this call yet, what the heck are you waiting for? Thousands of Metro Detroiters have already made this call to get help with their home and auto insurance. Our friends at Legacy Partners are one of Southeast Michigan's top independent insurance agents, and they provide a full-service, one-stop solution for all of your insurance needs, personal and business, large and small. Legacy has helped our listeners by fixing mistakes other agents have made, asking the right questions to get you the right coverage put in place to properly protect you. That's what it's all about. Oh, and saving you some money at the same time. What are you waiting for? Get your quote. Call these guys. Chances are, if you haven't checked your policies in the last year, you're paying too much and could be underinsured. Give Legacy Partners a chance to help with your home, your cars, life insurance, Medicare enrollment, business insurance needs. They got your back. Call them today, 586-209-4106, or visit legacypartnersins.com to get started with your new quotes. Doesn't cost you anything. These guys can and will save you money, as they did for many, many people. Eric jumped in and said Corum is going to be a stud in the NFL. Listen, I'll eat my hat if that happens. I'm not saying there isn't a place for him. I think there is. I would be surprised, Scott and Blake, if he turned into a quote unquote stud. I'll say what I said again. I'm not sure it translates. That doesn't mean that a guy can't have a role with the NFL, but stud, I'd be surprised at that. But the kid, listen, he surprised a lot of people along the way, and I think that's
he's a lot like David Montgomery, right? Like, I mean, that's his skill set. It's I'm a downhill runner in a power gap scheme. That's where he needs to be.
Couple questions. First, Jason, now I'm going to ask you guys a question. He asked me a question, and you guys have to get it too. One has to go: brisket, Cajun turkey, or jerk wings. One has to go. Do you know how hard that question is for me? That's a very difficult. I'm going to let you guys go first. I think my answer is going to surprise you. So I'm going to let you guys go first.
Go ahead, Scott.
Brisket's got to stay.
Brisket's got to stay. What else stays?
Probably the wings.
Okay.
That's the right answer. That's the right answer.
I'm going Cajun turkey.
And getting rid of the wings?
I am. I'm sorry, jerk. Listen to me, and listen to me good. I am going to make that Cajun turkey again for Thanksgiving, and you're going to have to come over. Both of you losers are going to have to come over like the day after Thanksgiving. I'm telling you. Jack Baligian, if you're in the chat right now, you tell these guys. I like my kid's like, that's the greatest turkey I've ever had. I'm telling you.
What did you do to make it different?
Okay, so I use the injector, right? I use that injector stuff, and then I put butter underneath the skin, and then the key is so many people.
I love the hinge there. That's
it's
not your first rodeo.
Yeah, but here's so many people they think the key, you sprinkle the Cajun on top of it, right? No, screw that. You put it underneath the skin, so that way it kind of marinates in with that butter, and it all kind of soaks in, and then it gets into that dressing. And I'm getting a chubby talking about it right now, so I'm going to stop. But
real quick, you only make that once a year.
No,
wings you make throughout. Oh, you make it.
You're damn right. I do.
That.
You're damn right.
Okay.
I do. As a matter of fact, so I do it now. Now it's in the rotation. My family demands it for when we have our big Christmas Eve party, and I'll make it multiple times during the year. So yeah, that was exactly.
So if there's a way that you could make turkey reasonably to eat, I would eat it all the time. But I think the generic sort of like, I'll just throw it in the oven and cook it.
I couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more. No, I agree.
Shit. Yeah, no.
I agree with you.
If you have a magic sort of thing going on, I could get rid of the wings very easily. Just out. Yeah.
I'm gonna make it for you guys. I'm not. Yeah. Look at there's the Mita. Did you see that?
Yeah.
The suggestions. Go to our website. Buy Mita merchandise. Chad said, Chad, nice to hear from you, by the way. Jenkins would look really good rotating in behind McNeil and Rader. Any of Michigan's OL guys would be good day 3 picks.
Yeah, so it's the laziest thing. I'm a Michigan fan. I live in Michigan. And if the Lions just decided they were taking just players from Michigan this year, it would be cool. Because that's how good they were. Like Mikey at 29, Sainer still at 29 would be just fine. And Roman Wilson as a receiver coming in, and Zinter as the guard. I know he's got broken leg, but he's fine now. That kind of stuff where they're Jenkins as a D tackle. Yes. You could find your way into Braden McGregor late or as an undrafted free agent kind of thing where that would make some sense. That team, they're so well coached. They are so it reminds me back of the Michigan State teams back 10 years ago when they were just so physically superior to everybody. They just were. Like when Michigan State's helmet, I know, look at Sean. When a Michigan State helmet showed up in the year 2013 at an All-Star game, everybody stood up and took note because they knew that at some point in time that dude was going to whoop somebody's ass physically playing football. Like, he's just going to be physically superior. And Michigan has a bunch of guys like that where you've got offensive line guys, you've got the running backs, you've got the receivers. Cornelius Johnson's a great blocker. Chris Jenkins I think is going to be a round 2, round 3 defensive tackle. He should be a productive player, or at least a productive part of a rotation at the NFL level.
Oh, for Harbaugh.
All right, Blake, go ahead. We got to get some final thoughts before the natty comes on.
Harbaugh, over under in rounds 4 through 7, 2.5 Michigan players drafted.
Over.
Me too. I think it's like way over.
Yeah, I agree with you. Jason said, pretty sure Shauner has made Cajun turkey at least 2-3 times already this year. Twice. I have. There's a third one coming up, though. I'm not going to make it. Scott, you're invited over to my house for the first night of the playoffs, by the way, if you want to come. What is it, the 20th? Was that the date?
I think the 20th is that, yeah.
Why are you asking me like I know?
Oh, no, I think it's the 22nd. I think it's Monday the 22nd. Yeah, so we're going to have a barbecue. I can't make it that day. I have too many other things planned. Okay, boys, before we get out of here, I need to tell you about Lindsey Broadwell, but I want you to think amongst yourselves right now who you going with in the championship game today. That's just, we have to ask it, although I have a feeling I know what your answer is. When it comes time to buying a house, selling a house, both, you need to contact the right agent. That agent is Lindsey Broadwell. That's who I'm recommending. Your house is probably the biggest investment you'll ever make, and that's why you need a pro. Lindsey grew up on the mean streets of Northville and has expanded her team all over Southeast Michigan. She is an expert in all facets of the business. When it's time to move, our friend Lindsey and her team will make sure you get the most out of your house and that everything goes smoothly when finding your new home. Buyer, seller, first-time buyers, doesn't matter. You want to contact a pro. You want to contact Lindsey at BroadwellHomes.com. She will help you with everything from start to close. Licensed realtor at Real Broker LLC. Start your search today at BroadwellHomes.com. Really appreciate it. All right, boys, before we get out of here, Scott, I can't thank you enough. Anytime you want to come on, you know you have the green light. I respect the heck out of you, my friend.
Anytime you guys want me to come on, we're good. We could do a mock draft ourselves if you wanted.
My pants just fell around my ankles. I'm in.
Whenever you want. I'm in. Whenever you want.
Who are you going with tonight?
Connecticut, I think, is probably the lazy answer there. I think it's, I'll take the lazy way out. I'll go UConn.
All right, Blake, I think your mic cut out.
I was muted. I was respecting your live read, so I muted myself. But it was also the smart play. UConn's the play, 100%. They're going to cover 6.5.
Brett said Purdue by 6. Ooh, how about that?
Well, Brett's going to have a loser, so that's tough.
Yeah, I took UConn at the beginning. I honestly, this was one of those tournaments where it was kind of like, UConn's going to win, right? It doesn't always work that way, but that's the way it goes. Scott, thank you. Blake, thank you. Todd, thank you. Thank you, most importantly, for joining us. Tell your friends about this. Blake, what else do they have to do? They have to like us. They have to subscribe. What else do they have to do, Blake?
They need to go on our YouTube channel. Subscribe.
Right,
subscribe.
Subscribe.
There's links to it on our Facebook page and on our website. So you can find it that way. It's unsyndicated. Just search that on YouTube and you'll be there. And then like the video. Like. That helps people find it organically.
Scott, when do you want to, you know what, maybe next week we can get together. Let's talk about it and let's see if we can't do a mock draft next week. That'll be just a shit show. I have no other way.
Awesome.
Yeah, it would be awesome.
So bad.
You know it would deteriorate so fast. You just know, because you have people like Jason that are going to bring up brisket, and then I'm going to go crazy about Cajun turkey. So, listen, we got to get out of here. Thank you. See you next time.
Off the Air with Sean Baligian, featuring Sean Baligian and Blake Majchrzak. Produced by Todd Losey and Blake Majchrzak. Executive produced by Sean Baligian and Todd Losey. Theme song, incidental music, and related sound effects are from Play It Loud by Jam Studio. Engineering, mixing, and graphic design support provided by the unsyndicated podcast team. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Off the Air with Sean Baligian on all your favorite channels. While you're there, be sure to rate and review the podcast. Got something to say to Sean? Call the unsyndicated hotline at 248-237-3257.